The sky was on fire. Captain Elias Drake stood frozen in the rubble of what used to be the bustling city of Houston. Above him, the great arcs of alien warships filled the heavens, their sleek, obsidian forms silhouetted against the orange glow of devastation. The air reeked of scorched concrete and burning flesh. "Drake, get your head in the fight!" Lieutenant Kara Vance's voice snapped him back to the moment. He turned to see her crouched behind the shattered remains of an overpass, blood streaked down her face. In her hands was a pulse rifle scavenged from a downed alien soldier. Elias blinked hard, forcing himself to focus. "Where's the rest of the unit?" "Dead or scattered. Command's gone dark," Kara said, her voice tight. "It's just us now." Above them, an alien dropship screamed as it descended, unleashing a new wave of Zycar infantry. The creatures moved with a predatory grace, their armor gleaming black and crimson, their elongated faces devoid of anything remotely human. "We have to fall back," Elias said, gripping his rifle. "There's no winning here." Kara shook her head. "Fall back to where? The whole damn planet's gone." Her words hit like a hammer. Just hours ago, Earth had been at peace, its people blissfully ignorant of the storm gathering beyond the stars. Then the Zycar came, raining death from the skies without warning. No demands, no negotiations, only annihilation. Elias clenched his fists, his mind racing. Retreat felt like surrender, but staying was suicide. A crackling noise interrupted his thoughts, a faint signal on his comm unit. "Fleet Command, evac zone, north of the river." "We've got a location," Elias said, pointing north. "We regroup there. Move." The journey through the shattered city was a gauntlet. The once bustling streets were now littered with corpses, and the towering skyscrapers were skeletal remains, their glass facades shattered. Elias and Kara encountered pockets of survivors along the way. Families huddled in basements, a young woman cradling a baby wrapped in a scorched blanket, an elderly man staring blankly at the horizon. "We can't take them all," Kara whispered, her voice thick with guilt. Elias paused, scanning the desperate faces. "We give them what we can," he said, pulling a ration pack from his belt and handing it to the woman. "And we tell them to stay hidden." "Stay hidden?" she asked, her voice trembling. "For how long?" "As long as it takes," Elias said, though he knew the words were hollow. The evac zone was a smoldering ruin when they arrived. What remained of the resistance was pinned down by Zycar forces, their lines stretched thin. Elias and Kara dove into the fray, joining a desperate defense led by an older man barking orders. "You two, cover that flank," the man shouted, his eyes sharp despite the blood running down his temple. "I'm General Krysek, and you're in my army now." Elias obeyed without question, taking position behind a collapsed transport vehicle. He unleashed a volley of fire, dropping 2 advancing Zycar soldiers. Kara was beside him, her shots precise and deadly. "Drake, we've got incoming armor!" she called out, pointing to a massive Zycar war machine rolling toward them. Krychek swore loudly. "We've got 1 anti-tank launcher, and it's out of rounds. Either someone gets creative, or we're done here." Elias scanned the battlefield, his mind racing. "What about the fuel depot?" he said, pointing to a cluster of tanks near the front line. Kara's eyes widened. "Are you insane? That'll take out half our own people." "Better than all of us dying here," Elias shot back. Krychek hesitated for a fraction of a second before nodding grimly. "Do it!" Elias sprinted toward the depot, his heart pounding. Zycar fire rained down around him, but he kept moving, reaching the tanks and planting an improvised explosive charge. The explosion was deafening. The Zycar war machine vanished in a fireball, and the shockwave knocked Elias off his feet. When he came to, the battlefield was eerily quiet.
"We're pulling out," Krichek said, helping Elias to his feet. "There's nothing left to defend here." Elias looked around at the survivors, scarred, bloodied, and beaten, but alive. "Where to?" "To space," Krichek said, his jaw set. "If Earth's lost, we'll make them pay in theirs." Elias felt the weight of the decision settle on him. They weren't soldiers anymore. They were Avengers. As the remnants of humanity boarded the last shuttles, Elias swore silently to himself. "They burned our cities. Now we'll burn their galaxy."
The cold steel walls of the HRF, Human Resistance Fleet, command ship, Eisenhower, hummed with activity. The last remnants of Earth's surviving leaders and military personnel had gathered here, deep within the asteroid belt that now served as humanity's base. It was a fragile sanctuary, hidden from the Zycar's watchful eyes, but its corridors buzzed with a dangerous mix of fear and determination. Captain Elias Drake stood at the edge of the war table, his gaze fixed on a hologram of the solar system. Red markers spread across Earth and its orbit, denoting Zycar occupation zones. Only a few green indicators remained, tiny, flickering beacons of hope in the darkness. "They've taken Mars and Europa," General Naomi Krichek said, her voice clipped. "And the last report from the Titan outpost." Silence. "Damn it," Elias muttered. "We can't keep losing ground like this." Krichek shot him a sharp look. "Ground? We don't have ground, Drake. We don't even have Earth anymore." Before he could respond, Lieutenant Kara Vance burst into the room. "We've got a problem." In the main hangar, chaos reigned. 2 squads of HRF soldiers had their weapons drawn, forming a tense standoff around a small group of civilians. At the center of the commotion was Major Anton Revik, a grizzled veteran known for his extreme methods, and a wiry young man who had his hands raised in surrender. "Major Revik, what the hell is this?" Elias demanded, stepping forward. Revik sneered. "Caught this one trying to sabotage the main reactor. Says he's from Earth, but I'm not buying it." The accused man looked up, fear etched across his face. "I'm not a spy. I was just trying to—" "Trying to what?" Revik interrupted, shoving the man to his knees. "Sell us out to the Zycar! We've lost enough because of traitors!" Kara stepped in, her voice sharp. "We don't execute people without a trial, Major. That's not how we do things." Revik's eyes narrowed. "And how do you propose we survive, Lieutenant? By trusting everyone who walks through the airlock?" Elias raised a hand. "Enough." He turned to the prisoner. "You have one chance to explain yourself. Why were you near the reactor?" The man hesitated, then blurted, "I wasn't sabotaging it. I was trying to modify it. If we reroute the output through the secondary conduits, we can triple the shield's capacity. I swear, I was trying to help." "Triple the shields?" Krichek, who had just arrived, frowned. "That's impossible. The reactor's already running at max output." "Not if you bypass the limiter," the man said quickly. "It's risky, but it could work." Revik scoffed. "Or it's a ploy to fry us all." Elias studied the man's face. There was fear, but also desperation, the kind that came from someone with nothing to lose. He turned to Krichek. "Is what he's saying possible?" Krichek considered it. "Theoretically, yes. But if he's wrong, it'll blow the reactor sky high." Elias felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him. If the shields failed, their hiding place would be exposed, and the Zycar would descend upon them like vultures. But if this man was telling the truth, it could buy them the time they so desperately needed. He looked at Revik. "Put your gun down, Major." "What? You can't seriously—"
"I said, stand down!"
Elias barked. Revik glared at him, but reluctantly lowered his weapon. Elias turned back to the man.
"You've got one chance. If you're lying, it won't be the Zycar you have to worry about."
Later that night, Elias found Krichek in the observation deck, staring out at the distant stars.
"You think I made the wrong call,"
Elias said, leaning against the railing.
Krichek didn't look at him. "I think we're running out of right ones."
Elias sighed.
"You told me back on Earth that if we ran, we'd make them pay in their galaxy. I believed you."
"And you still do?" she asked, finally turning to him.
"I have to,"
Elias said quietly.
"Because if we don't, then what's the point of all this?"
Krichek nodded slowly.
"Tomorrow we launch a strike on the Zycar supply convoy in Sector 4. If we pull it off, we might actually stand a chance. And if we don't?" Her gaze hardened. "Then we die fighting."
The next morning, Elias joined Kara in the hangar as they prepped their fighter for the mission.
"You sure about this?" Kara asked, tightening her flight suit. "After what happened with Revik, people are talking. Morale's shaky." "They need a win,"
Elias said firmly.
"And so do we."
As the fighters launched from the Eisenhower, Elias felt the familiar rush of adrenaline. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about striking back. For Earth, for humanity, for everything they had lost. But, in the back of his mind, a gnawing doubt lingered. How many more lines would he have to cross before this war was over? The charred wreckage of the Zycar convoy floated in the void, debris scattering like ash in a celestial wind. Elias Drake stood on the bridge of the Eisenhower, the soft hum of the ship's systems contrasting with the chaos of battle just hours earlier. Around him, officers moved briskly, their faces grim but victorious. The mission to intercept the convoy had succeeded, but not without cost. "They're calling it a miracle," Kara Vance said, stepping beside him. Elias didn't look at her. "We lost 3 fighters, 30 people dead. That doesn't feel like a miracle." Kara hesitated before replying. "We hit them where it hurts, Elias. That convoy was carrying fuel for their fleet. It's a blow they'll feel." Elias finally turned to face her, his jaw tight.
"Then why does it feel like we're just treading water?"
Before Kara could respond, a junior officer interrupted.
"Captain, you're needed in the briefing room. General Krichek's called an emergency council."
Elias nodded.
"Let's go."
In the cramped briefing room, the atmosphere was tense. General Krichek stood at the head of the table, a hologram of a Zycar ship spinning slowly above it. "This is the Secaltheron," she began. "A Zycar flagship stationed near the galactic core. According to the data we recovered from the convoy, it's a central hub for their communications network." Elias leaned forward. "You're saying if we take it out, we cripple their ability to coordinate?"
Krichek nodded. "Exactly. But there's more. The convoy intel also revealed something else. The Zycar are running scared." Kara frowned.
"Scared? They're wiping us out."
"Not as confidently as they'd like," Krichek countered. "Their internal communications are full of warnings about humanity's unpredictability. They expected us to roll over. We didn't." Elias studied the hologram. "What's the catch?" Krichek's expression darkened. "The Secaltheron is heavily fortified. It's surrounded by a minefield and defended by a fleet 3 times our size." A murmur rippled through the room. Sounds like suicide, Revik said from the corner, his tone laced with sarcasm. It might be, Kreechek admitted. But if we don't start taking risks, we lose this war before it starts. Elias stared at the hologram, weighing the odds. We'd need more than just firepower. We'd need an inside advantage. That's where this comes in. Kreechek pressed a button, and a new image appeared. A Z-car, bound and restrained in a containment cell. Its elongated face was bruised, its dark eyes gleaming with defiance. "What the hell is that?" Kara asked, taking a step back. "Our new ally," Kreechek said dryly. "This is Thalkesh, a Zykar defector. Claims he has information that can get us through the defenses around the Skaltheron." Elias's eyes narrowed. "And we're just supposed to trust him." "No," Kreechek said. "That's why you're going to interrogate him." The containment cell was dimly lit, the hum of the force field the only sound. Thalkesh sat motionless, his alien features inscrutable. Elias stepped inside, keeping his hand close to his sidearm. "Thalkesh, is it? You've got a funny way of showing loyalty, betraying your own kind." Thalkesh tilted his head, his voice a low, guttural rasp. "Loyalty is meaningless when it serves no purpose. The Dominion is flawed." "Convenient excuse," Elias said. "You want to help us? Fine. But if this is a trap, I'll personally make sure you don't live to see it." Thalkesh chuckled, a strange, clicking sound. "You humans, always so quick to threaten. It is both amusing and terrifying." Elias crossed his arms. "Then let's skip the small talk. How do we get to the Skaltheron?" Thalkesh leaned forward, his eyes glinting. "The defenses are formidable, yes, but there is a weakness. The mines are programmed to deactivate for Zykar ships broadcasting a specific signal. I can give you that signal." Kara, watching from the observation room, spoke into her comm. "That's too easy. There's no way it's just a signal." Elias echoed her suspicion. "Why would the Dominion leave a back door like that?" "Because they never imagined anyone would dare use it," Thalkesh replied. "And because arrogance blinds them." Elias studied him for a long moment. "Fine, but you're coming with us. If this is a trap, you die first." The mission to the Skaltheron was unlike any humanity had attempted. With Thalkesh's signal, the Eisenhower and its escort fleet slipped through the minefield, avoiding detection. But just as they closed in on the flagship, alarms blared across the ship. "Captain!" Kara shouted from the comm station. "The Zykar know we're here! We've got incoming fighters!" Elias swore under his breath. "All hands! Battle stations! Protect the Eisenhower at all costs!" As the human fleet engaged the Zykar defenders, Elias realized the mission was far from over. Thalkesh's information had gotten them this far, but now they faced the full fury of the Dominion. In the chaos of the battle, a chilling thought crept into his mind. Was this betrayal, or had the Zykar simply been waiting for them all along? The Eisenhower shuddered under the impact of another direct hit, the force causing Elias Drake to grip the edge of his console for balance. Red warning lights flashed across the bridge, and the air was thick with tension. The human fleet was outnumbered, and the Skaltheron loomed ahead like a dark, menacing monolith. "Shields are down to 34%! Kara Vance shouted, her voice cutting through the cacophony. "If we take another hit like that, we're done!" Elias's jaw tightened. "Divert power from non-essential systems. Focus all fire on those interceptors." Kara hesitated, then spoke in a lower tone. "If we divert more power, life support on lower decks will falter." Elias locked eyes with her. "Do it!
We don't have a choice. Her expression was grim, but she relayed the order. Around them, the bridge crew worked with a frenzied precision, their faces etched with determination and fear. In the lower decks, where the flickering emergency lights barely illuminated the corridors, Thalkesh sat alone in the makeshift war room, observing the battle through a data screen. His elongated fingers tapped the console rhythmically, his dark eyes scanning the chaos outside. The door hissed open, and Major Anton Revik stormed in, his sidearm drawn. "What are you up to, alien?" Revik growled, pointing the gun at Thalkesh. Thalkesh raised his hands slowly. "I am monitoring the battle, Major, as ordered. Don't play coy with me. I know your kind. This smells like a trap." Thalkesh tilted his head, his tone calm but edged with disdain. "If I intended to betray you, Major, you would already be dead." Revik stepped closer, his finger tightening on the trigger. "You think that scares me? I've seen enough of your people's honor." Before Revik could say more, Kara's voice crackled over the intercom. "Major, get back to your post. We need all hands on deck." Revik hesitated, his eyes narrowing. "I'll be watching you, alien." As the Major left, Thalkesh allowed himself a small, inscrutable smile. On the bridge, Elias watched as the battle unfolded in brutal clarity. The Zykar fleet was relentless, their fighters darting through the human lines like wolves among sheep. "Captain!" one of the tactical officers called out. "We're picking up a power surge from the Skaltheron. It's charging its primary weapon." Elias felt a chill run down his spine. The Zykar flagship's weaponry was legendary, capable of obliterating entire fleets in a single strike. "We're out of time," Elias said. "Thalkesh's signal got us this far. Now we take the fight to them." "Are you suggesting we board the flagship?" Kara asked, incredulous. Elias nodded. "It's the only way to take out their weapon before they annihilate us." The boarding party consisted of Elias, Kara, Thalkesh, and a dozen hand-picked soldiers. Clad in heavy armor and armed to the teeth, they launched toward the Skaltheron in a stolen Zykar dropship. Inside the vessel, the tension was palpable. "This is madness," Revik muttered, clutching his rifle. "We're walking into their stronghold, trusting a damned Zykar to guide us." "I don't like it any more than you do," Elias replied. "But unless you've got a better plan, keep your doubts to yourself." Thalkesh remained silent, his gaze fixed on the approaching flagship. When they docked, the team moved quickly, breaching the airlock and entering the Zykar vessel. The corridors were sleek and alien, their surfaces glowing faintly with an eerie, biomechanical light. "Stay close," Elias ordered. "Kara, keep scanning for the weapon core." As they advanced, they encountered little resistance. Too little. "This doesn't feel right," Revik muttered. "Focus," Elias snapped. "We're here to—" The words died in his throat as the walls around them pulsed and shifted. A high-pitched hum filled the air, and suddenly, the corridor behind them sealed shut. "It's a trap!" Kara shouted. From the shadows, Zykar soldiers emerged, their weapons humming with deadly energy. "Defensive positions!" Elias barked, raising his rifle. The battle was fierce and chaotic. The human soldiers fought valiantly, their weapons blazing, but the Zykar were relentless. Amid the chaos, Elias caught sight of Thalkesh standing back, his expression unreadable. "What are you doing?" Elias roared. "Help us!" Thalkesh hesitated, then drew a blade-like weapon from his armor. He moved with terrifying speed, cutting down 2 Zykar soldiers before standing back-to-back with Elias.
I told you I am no ally of the Dominion, Thalkesh said, his voice steady. Then prove it, Elias growled. They pressed forward, breaking through the Zykar forces and reaching the heart of the flagship, the weapon core. The room was vast and pulsating with energy, the weapons systems glowing ominously. "We don't have much time," Kara said, pulling out an explosive charge. As they worked to plant the device, Revik approached Thalkesh, his rifle aimed at the alien's back. "I knew it," Revik hissed. "This is all a game to you." Before Elias could intervene, Thalkesh turned, his eyes glinting. "You waste precious seconds with your paranoia, Major. Kill me if you must, but the weapon will fire before you finish." Elias stepped between them. "Revik, stand down!" Revik hesitated, then snarled. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe," Elias replied. "But it's my call." With the charges set, the team began their retreat, but not before a final twist revealed itself. A message crackled through the ship's comm system in Zykar. Thalkesh froze, his expression darkening. "What is it?" Elias demanded. "They've activated a failsafe," Thalkesh said grimly. "The weapon will fire even if destroyed." Elias felt the weight of the revelation hit him like a hammer. "Then we didn't stop anything." Thalkesh shook his head. "Not unless you trust me one last time." Elias stared at him, weighing the impossible choice as the timer on the charges ticked closer to 0. The timer on the explosive charges ticked down with relentless precision, the blinking lights illuminating the sweat and grime on Elias Drake's face. The hum of the Zykar weapon core filled the room with an ominous vibration, as if the flagship itself were alive and ready to unleash its wrath. 4 minutes! Kara Vance yelled, her voice strained. "We have to move now!" But Elias's attention was locked on Thalkesh, who stood unnervingly calm in the chaos. "You said there's a failsafe," Elias growled, his rifle still gripped tightly. "If these charges can't stop the weapon, what will?" Thalkesh's dark eyes gleamed, unreadable. "The failsafe can only be overridden manually. I know the codes, but to access the control terminal, someone must stay behind." A cold silence settled over the team. "You're suggesting suicide!" Revik spat, his rifle still trained on the alien. "How convenient for you to volunteer now, after leading us into this death trap." Elias silenced him with a sharp glare. "Revik, enough! Let him speak." Thalkesh nodded, unfazed by the hostility. "The Dominion built their weapons with redundancies. The core cannot be destroyed without triggering a cascade, unless the codes are entered to disarm the secondary systems. It is the only way to prevent the weapon from firing." "You're asking us to trust you again," Kara said, her tone skeptical. "No," Thalkesh replied. "I am asking you to trust yourself. The decision lies with your leader." Elias's mind raced. The seconds ticked away, each one dragging him deeper into an impossible dilemma. "Captain," Kara said urgently, pulling him aside. "He could be lying. For all we know, this is just another Zykar trick to buy them time." "And what if he's not?" Elias shot back, his voice low but fierce. "What if this is our only chance to stop that weapon?" Kara hesitated, glancing back at the alien. "Then let him do it. Let him stay behind." Elias turned to Thalkesh. "Will you do it? Will you stay and shut down the failsafe?" Thalkesh's expression hardened. "I will, but I cannot guarantee success. The process is intricate, and the Dominion will not make it easy." Revik let out a bitter laugh. "How noble. Convenient for you to become the hero at the 11th hour." Elias ignored him and stepped closer to Thalkesh. "If you're lying, I swear.
You have already made that promise, Thalkesh interrupted, a hint of dry humor in his tone. Your threats are repetitive. Elias clenched his jaw.
Fine, we'll leave you to it.
But as the team prepared to retreat, Thalkesh spoke again.
Wait.
Elias stopped, his rifle lowered slightly.
What now? I cannot do this alone,
Thalkesh said, his voice quieter.
The terminal requires 2 operatives to disarm the system. One to input the codes, the other to stabilize the core during the process.
Another heavy silence filled the room. You're kidding me, Kara muttered, glancing at Elias. Captain, we don't have time for this. Elias's heart sank. The truth was clear. If Thalkesh needed help, someone from the team would have to stay behind.
I'll do it,
Revik said suddenly, his voice sharp. The team turned to him, stunned.
Revik,
Elias began, but the Major cut him off.
Don't try to stop me. You've made it clear you don't trust my judgment, but I'll be damned if I stand by and let that thing destroy what's left of us.
Thalkesh regarded him curiously.
You would trust me with your life? No, Revik growled. But I trust my own ability to put a bullet in your skull if you try anything.
Elias hesitated, torn between relief and unease.
Are you sure about this? Revik smirked. What, you think I'm sticking around here because I like you? Someone's got to make sure this alien doesn't screw us over.
Kara grabbed Elias's arm, her voice low. Captain, this feels wrong. Revik's temper could jeopardize the mission. Elias shook his head. It's his choice. With Revik and Thalkesh staying behind, the rest of the team began their retreat. As they ran through the alien corridors, Elias couldn't shake the weight of what they were leaving behind. Captain! Kara called, snapping him out of his thoughts. We've got incoming Zykar forces ahead! The human soldiers braced for another fight, their weapons blazing as the Zykar defenders swarmed toward them. The battle was brutal and chaotic, each step toward the escape ship feeling like a marathon. Keep moving! Elias roared, his rifle taking down an enemy soldier. As they neared the docking bay, the sound of the weapon core growing louder behind them, a sudden explosion rocked the ship. Elias turned, his stomach twisting. Did they? Kara started, but her voice faltered. Elias raised his comm. Revik, report! Did you disarm the core? Static crackled over the line before Revik's voice came through, strained but defiant. It's done, he said. But the Zykar, they're... A loud burst of static drowned out the rest, and the line went dead. As the human team boarded their dropship and escaped the doomed flagship, the Skaltheron erupted into a blinding explosion, its weapon core collapsing in on itself. Elias watched the detonation from the viewport, his chest tight. He had gambled everything on Thalkesh's information, on Revik's sacrifice, and for now, humanity had won a victory. But deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that the cost had been far higher than they realized. Where do we go from here? Kara asked quietly. Elias's voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed his turmoil. Forward, he said. Always forward. The Eisenhower limped away from the wreckage of the Skaltheron, its engines sputtering under the strain of battle. The explosion had torn through the Zykar fleet, creating a momentary window of escape. On the bridge, Elias Drake stood grim-faced, his mind spinning with the weight of the decisions he'd made. Status report, Elias barked, gripping the back of Kara's chair as the ship shuddered again. Shields are down, engines at 40% capacity, Kara replied, her voice tense. We've got 3 enemy ships still pursuing us, and I don't think we've got the firepower to hold them off much longer.
Elias cursed under his breath. What about reinforcements? None, Kara said. We're on our own. Elias scanned the bridge. His crew worked with desperate precision, the weight of their survival hanging on every command. Divert power to engines, Elias ordered. We need to make it to the nearest jump point. If we can't outrun them, we're done. Kara hesitated. Captain, if we do that, we'll have no shields left. Elias's jaw tightened. Do it! The Eisenhower surged forward, its engines groaning with the strain. The 3 Zykar warships pursued relentlessly, their weapons firing in unison. The human destroyer danced through the fire, but every hit took its toll. Port side hit! A crewman shouted. Hull integrity compromised on decks 5 through 7. We're not going to make it, Kara said, her voice breaking. Elias's mind raced. They couldn't outrun the Zykar ships, and they couldn't outgun them. Unless... Kara, Elias said suddenly. What's the status of the debris field from the Scotheron? She blinked at him. It's still expanding. Why? We can use it, Elias said. If we lure them into the field, we might be able to use the wreckage as cover, and as a weapon. Kara's eyes widened. You're talking about threading through a minefield of debris while 3 warships are firing at us? Elias gave her a grim smile. You got a better idea? The Eisenhower dove into the debris field, weaving between the twisted remains of Zykar ships and fragments of their shattered fleet. The Zykar pursuers followed, their weapons blazing. Keep us tight to the wreckage, Elias ordered. Make them come in close. The ship shook violently as another barrage struck its hull. Sparks flew across the bridge, and a console exploded, sending one of the crew flying. We've lost the starboard thruster! Kara shouted. Elias didn't flinch. Keep us moving! The first Zykar ship entered the field too fast, colliding with a massive piece of wreckage. The impact tore through its hull, and a moment later, it exploded in a blinding flash. Yes! Kara cheered. Focus! Elias snapped. We've still got 2 more! The second Zykar ship adapted quickly, keeping its distance and firing strategically. Its weapons tore through the debris, forcing the Eisenhower into tighter maneuvers. They're learning, Kara said. Elias stared at the tactical display, his mind racing. Redirect all remaining power to weapons. We're going to take the fight to them. Kara spun in her chair. What? We can't take them head on. We're not, Elias said. We're using the debris. Target the largest fragment you can find. Something big enough to crush them. Kara hesitated, then nodded. Got it. Scanning now. The plan was desperate, but desperation was all they had left. The Eisenhower maneuvered toward a massive chunk of the Scotheron's hull, its jagged edges glowing faintly with residual energy. Target locked, Kara reported. Fire everything we've got, Elias ordered. The ship's remaining weapons lit up, striking the fragment and sending it hurtling toward the Zykar ship. The alien vessel tried to evade, but the debris moved too fast. The fragment struck it dead on, tearing through its core. The resulting explosion sent shockwaves through the field. That's 2 down, Elias said, his voice steady. The final Zykar ship, however, wasn't backing down. It maneuvered with deadly precision, closing in on the Eisenhower. They're locking on! Kara shouted. Elias's mind raced. They were out of tricks, out of firepower, and out of time. His gaze fell on the tactical display, showing the glowing remains of the weapon core deep within the debris field. Kara, Elias said quietly. What's the energy output on that core?
Kara checked her console. It's unstable, but still active. Why? Elias turned to her, his expression grim. We're going to use it. Her eyes widened. Captain, that thing could vaporize us if we get too close. Elias nodded. Exactly. Set a course. We're luring them straight into it. The Eisenhower plunged deeper into the debris field, the unstable core growing brighter with each passing second. The Zykar ship followed, its weapons hammering the human destroyer. Impact in 10 seconds! Kara shouted. Divert all remaining power to shields, Elias ordered. The Eisenhower raced toward the core, and at the last possible moment, Elias gave the final command. All hands! Brace for impact! The ship veered away, narrowly avoiding the core. The Zykar vessel, however, wasn't as fortunate. It collided with the glowing mass, triggering a catastrophic explosion that consumed everything within a 100-kilometer radius. On the bridge, silence fell as the crew processed what had just happened. We did it, Kara whispered. Elias exhaled slowly, his hands trembling. Status report. Engines are offline, and life support is failing, Kara said. But we're alive. Elias nodded, his gaze fixed on the empty void where the Zykar ships had been. For now. Despite the victory, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Humanity had struck a blow against the Dominion, but at what cost? Set a course for the nearest colony, Elias said quietly. We need to regroup. As the crippled Eisenhower limped through the stars, Elias knew one thing for certain. The war was far from over, and humanity's greatest battles were yet to come. The remnants of the Eisenhower drifted toward the hidden human outpost on the edge of the Severian Rift. The base, concealed within the shattered remnants of an asteroid field, was one of humanity's last strongholds in this sector. As the battered destroyer approached, its distress beacon flared, signaling its desperate need for refuge. Inside the ship, Elias Drake paced the dimly lit bridge, his mind heavy with suspicion. Something about their escape gnawed at him. They had survived too narrowly, and the Zykar's pursuit had been unnervingly focused. Captain, Kara said from the navigation console, her voice breaking the tense silence. We're receiving docking instructions. The outpost is ready to take us in. Elias nodded but said nothing. His gut told him something was wrong, but he had no choice. Their resources were spent, their ship barely holding together. He had to take the risk. The docking was rough, the Eisenhower scraping against the outpost's airlock as its damaged thrusters failed. Once aboard, Elias and his crew were greeted by Commander Vielle, a grizzled veteran with sharp eyes and a demeanor that reeked of authority. Drake, Vielle said, extending a hand. You've been busy. Elias shook it reluctantly. Had no choice. The Dominion's been relentless. Vielle's eyes flickered with something Elias couldn't quite read. Come with me. We need to talk. As they walked through the dim corridors of the base, Elias noticed the tension among its inhabitants. Soldiers whispered in hushed tones, and technicians moved with a nervous urgency. Something was amiss. In Vielle's war room, the two men faced a holographic display of the galaxy. Key systems were marked in red, all under Zykar control. The Dominion's closing in, Vielle said. They've taken 3 more colonies in the past week. We're losing this war, Drake. Elias crossed his arms. We've dealt them a blow. The Skaltheron is gone, and we've taken out a fleet. Vielle's lips curled into a cold smile. Impressive, but it won't matter if we can't turn it into an advantage. And how do you plan to do that? Elias asked, his tone sharp. Vielle hesitated,
then leaned closer. There's a Zycar defector here. Claims to have intel that could cripple the Dominion's supply lines. But what? He's requesting you specifically. Says he has information you need to hear. Elias's unease deepened as he entered the dimly lit interrogation chamber. Inside sat a Zycar operative, bound but calm. The alien's gaze locked onto Elias with unsettling familiarity. I know you, Elias said, his voice low. The Zycar tilted its head. Captain Elias Drake, humanity's shield and sword. Cut the theatrics. What do you want? The alien's mandibles clicked. To warn you, you are not safe here. Elias froze. What are you talking about? The Dominion did not lose the Skaltheron. They sacrificed it. They wanted you to escape. The words hit Elias like a blow. Why? To lead them here, the alien replied. This outpost is no longer hidden. Even now Dominion forces approach. Your commander Vial has ensured this. Elias's mind reeled. Vial betrayed us, not willingly, the Zycar said, but the Dominion has ways of ensuring compliance. Elias stormed out of the chamber, his heart pounding. He found Kara and pulled her aside. Prep the ship, he said, his voice urgent. We're leaving. Kara frowned. What? We just got here. There's no time to explain. Just do it. As they made their way back to the docking bay, alarms blared throughout the base. Unidentified ships inbound, a voice shouted over the intercom. Elias's blood ran cold. The Zycar were here. The outpost erupted into chaos as Zycar forces descended. Explosions ripped through the asteroid's surface, and soldiers scrambled to mount a defense. Elias and Kara fought their way through the corridors, the walls shaking with every impact. They reached the docking bay to find Vial waiting for them, a pistol in his hand. You're not going anywhere, Vial said, his face grim. Elias raised his rifle. You led them here. How could you? Vial's hand trembled, but his eyes were resolute. They have my family, Drake. My children. What would you have done? Elias hesitated, the weight of Vial's words striking him. We could have fought together. They don't leave loose ends, Vial said. This was the only way to give them a chance. Before Elias could respond, an explosion tore through the bay. The shockwave knocked them all to the ground. Elias struggled to his feet, blood dripping from a gash on his forehead. Vial lay unconscious, and Kara was pulling herself up. Captain, we have to go, Kara shouted, pointing to the Eisenhower. Elias nodded, but as they ran for the ship, Zycar soldiers emerged from the smoke, their weapons raised. Elias fired back, his shots precise, but they were outnumbered. Go! Elias yelled to Kara. Not without you! Go! Kara hesitated, then ran for the ship. Elias covered her, his rifle blazing until his ammo ran dry. As the Eisenhower's engines roared to life, Elias turned to face the advancing Zycar, his fists clenched. This wasn't the end. Not yet. The Eisenhower burst from the crumbling docking bay, its engines roaring to life. Kara gripped the controls with white-knuckled determination, her face streaked with sweat and ash. Behind her, the Zycar fleet poured into the Severian Rift like a tide of shadow, their weapons lighting up the void. On the surface of the asteroid, Elias Drake stood amid fire and ruin, his weapon depleted, his body battered. Yet his eyes burned with resolve. Kara, he said through the comlink, his voice steady despite the chaos. Get the crew out of here. Kara's voice cracked. I'm not leaving you. You'll die if you stay, Elias said, and humanity needs you more than me. The line went silent, but Kara didn't argue further.
She knew Elias too well. Inside the Eisenhower, Kara fought to keep the ship ahead of the pursuing Xikar vessels. Alarms blared, and sparks flew as enemy fire tore into their rear shields. "We've got incoming on all sides!" a crewman shouted. "Divert all power to forward engines!" Kara commanded. "We're punching through!" "But the fleet! Do it!" The Eisenhower surged forward, narrowly dodging a hail of plasma fire. Ahead, a swirling vortex of energy marked the Severian Rift's jump point, their only escape. "Prep the jump coordinates," Kara ordered. "We're going back to Earth." On the asteroid, Elias fought his way toward the Xikar command center, a makeshift fortress carved into the rock. He moved with purpose, using scavenged weapons to cut down the Dominion soldiers in his path. His comlink crackled. "Captain," Kara's voice came through faintly. "We're clear. Jumping to Earth now." "Good," Elias said. Tell them to hold nothing back." "Elias, don't—" The line cut off as the Eisenhower vanished into the jump point. The Eisenhower emerged in Earth's orbit, its hull scorched and its systems failing. Below, the planet burned. The Xikar had already begun their invasion, their ships blotting out the sky. Kara stumbled onto the bridge, her breath heavy. Status report.
"We've got minimal weaponry and no reinforcements," a crewman said grimly. "It's just us."
"No," Kara said, her voice firm. "It's not." She activated the ship's comm system, broadcasting across all frequencies. "This is Lieutenant Kara Mayfield aboard the Eisenhower. To all surviving human forces, the time to strike is now. The Xikar are overextended, and we have intel that can turn the tide. Humanity's future depends on this moment. Rise up!" The response was immediate. Across the Earth and its scattered colonies, resistance forces rallied. Ragtag fleets emerged from hiding, their battered ships charging into battle with desperate determination. The Eisenhower, despite its condition, led the charge. Kara directed the ship with precision, targeting weak points in the Xikar formations. "All ships, focus fire on their carriers," Kara commanded. "Cut off their reinforcements." The human forces fought with a ferocity born of desperation. Every ship lost was another reminder of the stakes, but every Xikar vessel destroyed was a beacon of hope. Back on the asteroid, Elias reached the Xikar command center. Inside, he found the Dominion's regional overseer, a towering alien with a cold, calculating gaze. "You're too late, human," the overseer said. "Your people are finished." Elias raised his weapon, his hands steady. "We'll see about that." The two clashed, their battle brutal and unrelenting. Elias fought with the raw determination of a man who had nothing left to lose, while the overseer wielded the precision of a master tactician. The fight ended with Elias driving a blade into the overseer's chest, his own body riddled with wounds. As the alien collapsed, Elias staggered to the control console, his vision blurring. Through sheer force of will, Elias activated the asteroid's core, overloading its unstable energy reserves. The explosion would destroy the Xikar fleet in the rift, cutting off their reinforcements and giving humanity a fighting chance. As the countdown began, Elias slumped against the console. He activated his comlink one last time.
"Kara,"
he said weakly. Her voice came through, thick with emotion. "Elias, we're winning. You did it." "Not me," Elias said, a faint smile on his lips. "We did." The connection cut off as the asteroid erupted in a blinding wave of light, consuming Elias and the Xikar fleet around him. The explosion in the rift marked a turning point. The Xikar fleet over Earth faltered without reinforcements, and humanity pressed the advantage. One by one, the alien ships fell, their dominance shattered by the unrelenting human assault. When the last Zykar vessel was destroyed, cheers erupted across the comm channels. Humanity had won, but the cost was steep. On the bridge of the Eisenhower, Kara stood silent, her gaze fixed on the void where the rift once glowed. "He knew this would happen," she said quietly. One of the crew nodded. "He gave us a chance." Kara clenched her fists. "We'll honor him, and we'll rebuild. For Elias. For humanity." As Earth's battered survivors began to pick up the pieces, the stars bore witness to humanity's resilience. They had been pushed to the brink, but they had risen, their defiance burning brighter than any Dominion flame. Humanity had won, but the fire Elias ignited would blaze forever,